Well, it happened. We got the prices and the release dates for both new Xboxes. I told you all last time that Microsoft would probably make the entry point low so that you were more likely to spend money on games and services, and boy did they. But there was something else hidden in that announcement, and I want to tell you today how that thing will affect the strategy that I told you about in my last video about the consoles. Also, I want to respond to some of the great comments that you all had and some of the points that you all made, so stick around for that. If you don't know me yet, my name is Matt Horton. I am a musician and a product manager making videos here on YouTube about the things that I could talk about forever: tech and art and how they come together. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me what game you are playing right now. I'm halfway through the second route in Nier Automata and I am loving it. But if you're just gonna leave a comment to tell me that I'm gay, I'm sorry to tell you that ain't news. I know, been this way my whole life. So this is the Xbox Series S, and it looks bonkers. I don't like the way that it looks, but you know what? That doesn't matter because it's $299. $299. That is an incredible price point, especially for what you get. You get variable refresh rate, you get ray tracing, and you get 1440p video at 120 frames per second. That's not 4K, but 1440p is plenty for a massive majority of people. And I was surprised that it also upscales to 4K in case you do want to plug it into a 4K television. That's super clever. Now that's not native 4K output, but the power that it takes to compute native 4K output is a lot. So if you're gonna cut something for cost, you might as well cut for resolution rather than graphical fidelity or frame rate. And sure, that upscaler is not gonna be the same exact quality, but it's gonna be nearly there for $200 cheaper. This was the right trade-off. That 120 frames per second with variable refresh rate was the right thing to keep. And I am with all of y'all that say that the 512 gigabyte SSD is much smaller than I'd like it to be. That said, saving on the SSD is a really easy way to save on cost. And I know that Microsoft wanted to get the cost on this thing down. Again, this is the right trade-off. I know the custom expandable storage that's coming from Seagate is going to be pretty expensive, but my hope is that as Microsoft expands the partners that they work with, that those costs come down. We also got confirmation of the release date of November 10th for both the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. And we got the final confirmed price from Microsoft for the Xbox Series X of $499. Again, I think that's a great price. For that, you're going to get native 4K resolution with a promise of 8K in the future and a 1 terabyte SSD. Again, that is really the only upgrade. Technically, the GPU is 3 times more powerful, but the only thing extra it's doing for you is outputting that native 4K resolution. That specifically is the thing that Microsoft cut when they went down to the Series S. At this point, I'm really just waiting for Sony to tell us what's going on with the PS5. When is it coming out? How much is it going to be? Where can I pre-order it? People have budgets that need to get figured out. People want to save for this. It can't come down to the wire. One thing I'm eager to see is what Sony does in terms of pricing on the PS5. I think with the Series S coming in at $299, since Sony is playing the hardware sales game, it only makes sense for them strategically to come in at $399. I just don't think that they can come in any higher than that. I'm not saying they won't. I'm just saying it wouldn't be smart to. If they did that, I'd imagine that the discless version would be $399 and the one with the disc would be $499, but who knows? I could be wrong. And honestly, with the exclusives lineup that they've got, they could probably sell it for more. Hell, I'm gonna buy one almost exclusively to play Spider-Man Miles Morales. It's also way earlier in this particular news cycle, but the rumors of a new Switch have me really excited. Honestly, this potential Switch Pro or whatever it might end up being is way more exciting than either of these consoles. But there's one aspect of this Xbox announcement that I think was underappreciated, and that is that EA Play is coming to Xbox Game Pass for no additional cost. That means that when you sign up for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, you're also going to get a subscription to EA Play, which is a similar subscription service with all EA games. Alongside that, for free. Now, EA Play doesn't have all EA games day and date on release like Xbox Game Pass will with new Xbox Game Studios games. However, it is super compelling as an additional value for Xbox Game Pass subscribers. You'll remember from my last video on the consoles, I find Game Pass to be the most interesting things that Microsoft is doing with Xbox right now. And that's just because that's what I find interesting. I personally am playing a ton of Xbox Game Pass games right now. I find it to be a really good deal. And like I told you last time, I think it's a core part of Microsoft's strategy. My take was that Microsoft does not care about console sales in this generation, at least not primarily. Instead, they want to get you buying games or subscriptions. It's a difference in metrics. Where Sony's metric is hardware sales, Microsoft's metric is software and services revenue. Microsoft doesn't care where you play or how you play, just as long as you pay them. You could play on your PC, you could play on your phone, you could play on your Xbox One, or you could play on your Xbox Series S or Series X. As long as you're buying the games or buying a subscription and giving them some money, they see it as a win because they're focused on the software and services revenue. This attitude is actually pretty big at Microsoft and has been for a number of years now. Towards the end of the Steve Ballmer era at Microsoft and all the way through Satya Nadella's era at Microsoft, they have expanded their reach by putting all of their software on every platform they possibly can instead of trying to own the platform like they used to with Microsoft Windows. That strategy came from them losing ground. In the 90s and early to mid 2000s, Windows was dominant. But then as smartphones took off and Microsoft was nowhere to be found, at least successfully in that race, they no longer had a grip on the software industry from an operating system perspective. The only strategy they had from a consumer perspective was to put the software they did have that was already popular, Office, everywhere. I think we're seeing the similar thing with Xbox. Xbox One, we know, did not do too hot. And since Xbox lost ground in the last generation, what they have that people like, they can now put everywhere and provide as many possible front doors, like I said last time, to those games. But that's the weakness. And some of you said this in the comments last time, and I actually agree with you. Because in order for this strategy to work, they've got to launch great first-party titles from their Xbox Game Studios. And we've seen promises of some of those. And some of y'all mentioned those in the comments. Games like Avowed and Fable. But what we haven't seen yet is gameplay. The only gameplay we've seen is for Halo Infinite. And I'm not going to sit here and trying to get into the nitty gritty of how that gameplay demo looked or didn't look. But we've seen news since then that would seem to suggest that things are not going so hot with the development of that game. At the very least, it's going to be a while before it comes out, even if it is a great game when it does arrive. A couple of you mentioned Xbox All Access in the comments, and that got brought up in the Xbox announcements this week as well. Xbox All Access is essentially a financing plan. For the next generation, it's going to be $25 a month for the Xbox Series S and $35 a month for the Xbox Series X. And it includes Xbox Game Pass Ultimate and EA Play now. The idea is that $300 or $500 is a lot of money for someone to come up with all at once. So someone can get into Xbox very easily with $25 and have a bunch of games ready to play the moment they turn it on. Seeing Microsoft push this really hard right now seems to all but confirm to me the strategy that I laid out in that last video. However, Xbox All Access is a loan. That's what a financing plan is. And I'm sorry, Microsoft, but I'm just not going to go into debt for a video game console. If you do the calculations on $25 a month, it saves you about $20 over 2 years. But at the end of the day, what is $20 over 2 years? Contrary to what a lot of you all think, I am not Microsoft's biggest fan just because I said nice things about their strategy. I actually have a lot of problems with Microsoft. Specifically, I have a ton of issues with their GitHub ICE contract, and I don't love their sale of Azure services to ICE either. In general, I think that blind loyalty to corporations is ridiculous. I cannot abide a fanboy. I saw a lot of comments saying that you liked my video because I said nice things about the Xbox. And while I appreciate that you're here and I appreciate that you liked it, I said those nice things because there were nice things to say. Because Microsoft was doing cool stuff, not because I am defending poor old Microsoft. Satya and Phil are going to be fine without me. They just happen to be making neat stuff right now. Many of you wanted to make sure that I was aware of PlayStation Now or Google Stadia or PlayStation Plus or some other service that could potentially be a gotcha for my points in my last video. And I promise you, I am fully aware. I just think that Microsoft is taking Xbox Game Pass more seriously than any of those services, and that they're uniquely positioned to do well in a way that those others are not. Let's take Google Stadia as an example. Google's cloud platform, incredible. When I was a software developer, Azure was a step behind, but Google is brand new to video games. I really think that they didn't understand how important latency was to gaming. I just don't think that they get what gamers want. Now, the latency on Xbox Game Pass streaming or xCloud, whatever you want to call it, is not great, but it is much better than Google Stadia. And I think that Microsoft, or at least the Xbox team, understands gamers in a way that's going to take Google a lot longer to arrive at. Oh, and one other thing we should talk about. We talked a lot about Game Pass last time because I think Microsoft is talking a lot about it right now. And also we talked a lot about the streaming aspect specifically. But Game Pass is not a streaming only service. The primary method of play is that you download these games on your PC or your Xbox and you play them there. PlayStation Now does this as well. Also, my argument was that Xbox was focused on software and services revenue. So even if Xbox never had a streaming service, I still could have made that video because Microsoft still makes money if you pay them for the games. And in fact, being subscribed to Game Pass actually gets you 20% off of purchases of games that are in the service because they know that those games are going to filter in and out of the service over time. A lot of you all mentioned the new Nvidia cards, and honestly, they look really cool. I've got a really nice PC sitting right next to me. I'm actually recording on it right now. I play a ton of Destiny 2 on it, so I promise you PC gamers, I've got you. But the thing about PCs is that they're never going to kill consoles. You're never going to be able to kill the simplicity of plugging in a box, turning it on, and booting into a game. And honestly, to those that think that the SSD stuff that the PS5 and Xboxes are doing this round just doesn't matter, you're really missing out on a critical aspect of video games: user experience. Turning on a machine and getting into the game is actually a huge barrier to even playing video games at all. This is why things like Raise to Wake and Quick Resume on your phone and your laptop are super convenient. And this is not to mention that PCs are super expensive. If we look just at the new Nvidia GPUs, the base one starts at $499, and that's just the GPU. If you add on everything else you need to build a PC, that's inaccessible for a lot of people. Whereas these consoles start at $300. So no, Nvidia didn't just nuke consoles. That doesn't mean that PC gaming is dead either. PC gaming's great. But sometimes, honestly, a lot of the times, I choose to play on a console just because I want to go sit on the couch. I sit at this desk right here every day, all day for work. And then for this hobby, I sit here and edit and record videos. I'd rather be in a different room looking at a different screen because that's as far away as I can get right now. The user experience matters a lot, often more than the specs do. In fact, user experience matters so much that oftentimes we'll lock ourselves into predatory relationships with corporations just to get it. Like Xbox All Access, for example. Or like how I keep buying Apple hardware despite Apple's App Store crap because it just works so damn well. In fact, I made a video specifically about Apple's App Store shenanigans, and you can go watch that right here. So I'm going to see you over there. Okay? Bye.